So one of the questions you're asking earlier too of kind of how I actually got into reefing. And this is one I don't normally talk about very often, but before this, like my younger days, like most of you, if I had a tank, then for whatever reason, I was out it for years and years and years. And my girlfriend, who's now the wife at the time, had this like little tank. And I was like, hey, what are you doing with that? I'm like, I kind of miss having a tank. So I got that offer. And of course, it turned to like little freshwater planted tank. And that set off a whole like little bit of a session there. So I was like really hardcore into the planted tanks and all those crazy like bonsai escapes and all that type of stuff. And eventually I started looking around. I was like, oh, a reef tank could be kind of cool. And of course I'm excited about it. So I'm telling like everybody I know, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start a reef tank. And I was at like a chiropractor place at one point. And I was talking to the secretary. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna start a saltwater tank. And she was like, oh yeah, I used to have one of those. And she's like, so that was like, we're sitting there talking for like 20 minutes about it. And she's like, yeah, a saltwater tank could be great. But then I still remember this. And in my head, she's like, but they're so fragile. She's like, even a dog hair in your tank could crash your tank. So I was like, what the heck? I'm like, there's no way they can actually be this hard. So despite all that, started anyways. I took a little 12-gallon fluval edge, which was my first reef tank. So I did that and built my own little DIY LEDs for it and had little aqua clears. So I basically converted into a reef tank. So that was my first little tank. And then shortly after that, I upgraded it. So this is, by now I've probably had 7 or 8 tanks or more. So I just kept slowly upgrading. And then I went from 12 gallons. I think I had a 16 gallon. Then I went to 24 gallons. And this is the 24-gallon innovative marine tank, which was a cool little tank with lovely bent glass corners, which I mean, looked awesome. But then something terrible happened. If you can guess what happened next. So we came home from grocery shopping one day. We had a little puppy at the time, Orion, who was his little cage was like right beside where the tank was. Walked in the door, set everything down. Boom, big loud snap. Look over, the puppy's freaking out. Like, at first, like pistol shrimp, nope. Big sheet of water's coming out, was just like dousing my dog with water. The wife's freaking out because the dog's freaking out. I'm like grabbing duct tape, like trying to tape the tank up and everything. So that was a lovely start to reef keeping. So yeah, I've learned my lesson. As pretty as bent glass tanks are, I'm going to stick to flat glass from now on. So that kind of sucked, but it led me to more and more tank upgrades, which is kind of a good thing. So then I went to the 30-gallon innovative marine one, which was an awesome little tank. Speaking of reef clubs, I mean, on the floor there, you can see the temporary one, which thankfully, having local people to work with, someone was able to save me and give me a tank and kind of keep me going. So, I mean, that's one huge plus of being a reef club and having local reef buddies is they can help you out in a pinch, which tanks breaking is obviously one of them. So that was the next tank, was the little 30-gallon fluval edge, which was a cool little tank. And I did, as you guys know, I'm big into DIY. So I've done a bazillion little upgrades as I went. And eventually, why I've realized I keep upgrading is the tanks get fuller and fuller and fuller, and you eventually run out of space in your tanks until there's just physically no space for it. So of course you got to upgrade, right? So that was this is my first big tank, which was a 6-foot shallow reef tank. If I can just make that fit on there. So I've had that one for a few years, upgraded that to a bigger one. Floating light rail. This one actually a lot of people ask me on all the time. I've loved the floating light rails. I've done all my tanks now. So that's with extruded aluminum. It's fairly easy to do, but by the time you buy a lot of the manufacturer ones, it's really not that much different in price. You can get like a really cool floaty look with it. And now this is the current tank now. So now I have a 200-gallon water box Peninsula, which is, love this tank. And with this one, I took out the banister on the stairs and put it up there. So I had to reinforce the floor a bit. I put a bunch of 2x6s underneath because it's kind of where the stair header is. So I put, I think 3 or 4 2x6s I think I put downstairs just to reinforce it. But yeah, now it's kind of like a room divider, which I think is super cool. So I really love that look. On this one too, I've now went to like the auto water changes on it and stuff, which has been awesome. Where is, and my other one, and the other tank that I had was previously a lagoon tank. So this was a really cool tank, but I had made a bit of a deal with the wife that I could only have 2 tanks. So I had to play within it. So of course I have to upgrade both tanks to be as big as I can get away with, right? So this is kind of like the stand of that one. So actually, I really like that tank. It was a nice little tank. But now this is the other current frag tank. So that's the one right beside me. So I got a big shallow frag tank, and I got the water box tank. So that's kind of where I am now after about probably seven or eight upgrades later. And now with these tanks, one thing that kind of inspired me with Reef Dudes and stuff is I like building things. I like doing the DIY things, and I have a lot of fun doing that. And usually I'll look at something and be like, oh, if they can do it, why can't I? And then I'll just find a way to build it. Like I saw Daniel earlier, you had the little water changer thing, which is awesome. How's it working out for you? Yeah, love it. So stuff like that. Like I've had ones where you try and clean your sand bed, and I've seen some people will put the hose into the filter sock, and that kind of works. But the amount of times it's fallen out and sprayed wall over the floor, I'm like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. That's kind of came up with a way to do the kind of continuous sand bed gravel cleaner, which that has worked really well for me. Another random one. I just randomly pulled a bunch of photos of stuff I found of previous projects, but like auto water changes. This was a triple tube dosing head, which I bought off eBay for like $60, but it has 3 different tubes on it, and you can kind of just adjust the little screw on how much tension it puts on each one to calibrate it. So that was like my first auto water changer. So it's one pump. It cost me $60. You could tune it in, and you're sucking out, adding at the exact same time. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can do things to make the hobby really cheap, because I know everyone complains it's expensive, which definitely can be. What are some other cool ones we've had in the past? DIY battery backup, same thing. Like I've had like the Ecotech ones, which has 18 amp hour battery in it. This guy was like 130 amp hours, something ridiculous. I could run my tank, power heads for like a week off it, like no problem. So that was just a battery I got from free when they were upgrading one at a server room thing at work. So I mean, there's lots of really cool things that you can do. Even other ones, those are fairly cheap Amazon ones that are currently on my tank. So that's, what are those, 22 amp hours, and the stock one I think is 18, so it's about 2.5 of those, relatively cheap to build. If your tank has a power outage, it's going to keep everything going, keep everything alive. So there's lots of things like that are super duper easy to DIY that I think are a great way to do it. To do some other recently kind of fun projects, helped a buddy out with his floating reef tank, which was a fun one. I know everyone always has a stand around it. Yeah, and he was determined. He's like, I don't want to stand. I'm like, let's do this. So there is like a whole slew of 2x4s in the wall to brace the heck out of this thing. And we welded up some little triangle brackets underneath it to kind of brace off the wall. But it's just a really different, unique look. So I'm a big fan of like pushing the boundaries and just doing things that are unique and different. Some other little fun projects with the water box. This was the ATO container for it, which was like, as I got it, I'm like, I already planned on having a remote ATO, so I wasn't going to use it, but it's like this gorgeous, like polished glass edge little tank. So I turned that into a little all-in-one tank. So that's super easy to do. Same thing if you have a normal standard glass tank. I mean, a couple pieces of acrylic cut and then basically turn into a little all-in-one tank. So that was actually really easy to do, and that turned into like a pretty cool little build that was pretty quick and easy. So let's put a little C-shape pump in the bottom and little acrylic baffle and silicone it in. What else was fun ones? Chaeto reactor. I mean, again, a lot of those, I don't know why they're overly priced, but it's basically acrylic tube with a light in it. So same thing, those are super duper easy to build and DIY if you want to do those ones. Another fun one. This one I've seen a bazillion people do now, so it kind of makes me happy to see it out there, but just the Voss water bottles into dosing containers. That's one I've did in just like my old nano tank or used for trace elements. But, if you're cruising around, like a Home Depot or like a dollar store, that type of thing. I mean, if you have ideas of cool reef projects in mind, you see inspiration for little things everywhere. You're like, oh, that's a cool container. That'd be sweet for a dosing container, right? So many of them, you go to buy some reef one, it's like $80, and you're like, oh, that's like a $4 container at the store. So it's really easy to build all kinds of cool stuff with that one. Again, there's another one I was dosing. One of the questions I had earlier was about pH. I've been playing with some nasty stuff, potassium hydroxide, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend. But same thing with that. Like my dose container is like a $4 pasta jar from the dollar store. You can put a bulkhead in it and a nice tube, and you can make really cool stuff. Another good one, breakout boxes. If you guys are running Neptune for doing leak detectors, I know the actual ones are like 30, $40. These, or sorry, yeah, those little rain sensors, they're like less than $1. So for, $30, you could have 30 leak detectors. So like super duper easy ways that you can kind of get creative and build your own versions of things. So I'm a big fan of going that route. It sounded like someone didn't like the Neptune there.
Yeah. I'm more of a GHL guy.
I have one of those too.
I know. I've seen.
Yep. I got to dig into it a little bit more, but yeah. So I got the GHL on the frag tank and I got the Neptune on the other tank. And I have a Hydros on this one as well. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's the only way to truly figure out how to use and learn them all is to try them all. So gotta do what you gotta do.
You're not letting you get a third tank, huh?
No, I'm cut off. Another random cool thing I made that I thought was pretty neat, but is for the prime fuge, I was using it for a fuge light. I was getting a bunch of algae growing in my skimmer. So I made these little, like almost like barn door for like a light, little flaps so that I could shape the lights and kind of tone it in so it doesn't hit the edge of the sump and, grow tons of algae on it, or it's not hitting my skimmer. So it just keeps your sump and certain things cleaner. So there's lots of cool, creative little things that you can do. Okay, so a few other questions. I'm just going through my list of stuff I wrote when we were chatting earlier. So where do you see the hobby going in the future? I think it is going to be more and more into hobbyist trading long term, just because I know, the bans and stuff. I mean, they come and go. And if you go back the last 10 years, you see it's always been something's getting cut off or banned and it comes back and goes away. And then we just find new sources. And it's going to be like that forever. But I do think a lot of it is going to be more hobbyists trading stuff, which one thing that I kind of like is, with all the advancements of everything that we have, it is getting easier to keep a reef tank, right? Like equipment's getting better. There's all kinds of crazy auto testers and stuff, which is making it easier and easier for people to be successful, which I think is going to be more hobbyists having more success, more corals to trade and all that type of stuff. The fish side's another bit of a question, just because those are not quite as easy to read for most people, but okay, another one you're asking, ways to increase pH, which has been proven. Simple, cheapest, easiest way, outside airline to your skimmer if you can do it. That's probably been like your best bang for your buck without spending money on consumable media. Otherwise, I mean, there is stuff like the soda lime, which will scrub, it's basically like kalkwas or pellets, and that will scrub CO2 out as the air passes through it. So on mine, like I ran outside airline to my attic, which gave me about a 0.1, like the same one in that little vacuum thing that I built. I just used a bunch of those and filled it full of soda lime. So basically just would last months because it's in my attic and I don't really want to be crawling up there changing media all the time. So I built a really big one and that's been going for a few months now and it's still going strong. But the only problem with that is then you got to buy all that media to replace it. So that's the one downside. The next step that I am kind of going into is going to be doing an air exchanger. So actually that's going to put one on my house. If your tank is going to equalize with the CO2 and the ambient air around it for the most part. So if you have a lot of people, a lot of pets in your house, your CO2 is going up, your tank is going to absorb it. So one cool thing I got is a little CO2 meter. And this guy will actually tell you whatever the CO2 level is in your house. So outside air is around 400. Inside houses are quite frequently, 1,000 plus. So you're having more than double the concentration of CO2 or more that's working its way into your tank. So the more you can do to get rid of it, the higher the pH is going to be. Now, I have been playing with some other stuff. Like one of them is potassium hydroxide. And it's very effective at boosting your pH because what it does is it absorbs the carbonate atoms, like the hydroxides bond with the or the CO2 in your water, basically. And then it allows, so less of your alkalinity and everything is being wasted with those hydroxides and it's going to boost your pH and it works phenomenally well. However, it also ups your potassium quite a bit. And so I've been playing with that for the last few months and it's been some amazing pH boosts. However, my potassium got very sketchily high. So it was 650 is kind of the most you ever want your potassium to be. That's kind of like stuff could start going downhill after that. And mine got up to like 620 or something like that. So I just did a huge water change to knock it back down the other day. But so there's lots of cool stuff like that I've been experimenting with. But that one's still a little bit sketchy because it's very easy to overdose it long term if you're not paying attention to potassium on it. But there's some really cool stuff with just how the hydroxides can bond with it. Easy, safest way, I mean, kalkwasser. On my frag tank, just with the kalkwasser reactor, that's, I'm still amazed that the one reactor is keeping my elk, everything stable on that tank. In the past, I've made my own. They're much smaller, just, my own magnetic stir, or I built one with a little motor and a little arm inside that just spins it. But I always found it couldn't keep up with the tank. But having like a really big one now, I think it's like a 3-gallon cylinder. And that's been keeping up the whole frag tank, which is like a 6.5, 7 foot tank packed full of coral. So I've been really amazed at how that's been keeping up with it. So, I mean, kalkwass are the easiest way to keep pH up. And you can get outside air to your skimmer. I mean, not everyone wants to drill a little hole in their wall, but that can make a decent substantial boost. And then you don't have to pay for consumable media, which is always a big thing for me. So earlier too, you're asking about the Mastertronic. That is one of my new favorite things. I personally am a big slacker on testing. I don't do it nearly as much as I should. Maybe if you're lucky, I used to be really good once a week. Now you're like, once a month. Now it's just like randomly, and yeah, very spotty. So far I've had that for a couple of weeks now, and it's been amazing with just I have it set up to every Friday to test absolutely everything for me. So that's been a pretty awesome thing. It's not the cheapest thing, but it's a pretty awesome tool if you can get one. So if you guys have any specific questions, let me know. Another one that you asked earlier was about the Reef Moonshiner method. So I haven't done that yet, but I have been researching it. From my takes so far, it seems basically like a more fine-tuned approach to what's it called, Triton method, where basically you send an ICP, you dose all the specifics that go along with it. They're essentially doing the same thing. And realistically, I mean, if you're doing that many tests on your tank and you're dosing everything specific based off what ICP is telling you, it's pretty hard to mess up. So it is definitely a solid approach. I've been kind of doing a little bit of a hybrid approach. I have a bunch of like the Brightwell, like more just the bulk trace elements I've been dosing on it. And then I might get some of the individual elements that is lacking from it. So just do kind of a hybrid one. So use the bulk stuff, automate on a doser, and just do little tweak top offs here and there with individual ones. So that's kind of the next thing that I've been starting to dabble around with. The other one you're asking in the process for getting a larger calcium reactor, that is a good way to go. If the bigger the calcium reactor, the more stable it's going to be. And with all the more media in it, you could also run it at a higher pH. So it will have less of an impact to the pH on your tank. And just having that massive volume, it just keeps everything dead stable. So it's definitely a good way to go. And if you are doing the calcium reactor, get a parasol pump for it. It just makes your life a bazillion times easier. All right. What else do you guys want to know? What else do you want to talk about? Ask away.
Hey, Deven,
you want to open it up?
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
Brian.
Sorry, thanks. I was just going to ask you, like, automatic water changes, right? They seem to be all the rage. And when you think about like Triton method and dosing this and dosing that, kind of how effective do you think an automatic water change is if you can do, I don't know, 2-3 gallons a day on a 100 gallon system, for example?
I'm doing 2.5 gallons a day on my 200 gallon. And I think it's kind of like a safety blanket away. Like for instance, if I wasn't doing them with that potassium hydroxide I was dosing, I very well could have had my potassium too high to like dangerous levels because I didn't test it for like a month, right? And it creeped way up there. So I mean, honestly, if I didn't have them, that could have been trouble. So I know lots of people like anti-water changes, but they're kind of a safety blanket. If there's something, when you're dosing stuff to your tank, right? Nothing is 100% pure. There's always that little bit, maybe it's like 95% pure. There's that 5% of unknowns. And if you never do a water change over time, a year or two later, whatever that random 5% is, at first, not a big deal, right? But after a year or two, it could build up to be harmful to some degree. And it's usually stuff that you don't know about. Where if you do the water changes, it's constantly diluting it. So it never really builds up on you. So, I mean, you can definitely get away without doing them, but I think it adds a bit of that safety blanket just to prevent any bad stuff from building up. Or if you're lacking trace or other stuff, it helps replenish some of it. So I'm a fan of them. I mean, I wish I had on my frag tank too, so I can be extra lazy, but I just have it in my water box. But so I do definitely think there is benefit long-term just to keeping your tank happy and healthy and just preventing any of those little things that could creep up that you don't test for or don't really know about.
Great, thanks. I have a Masterflex pump that I'm thinking about repurposing to do them. And I can't figure out if it's worth it or just do 20 gallons a week and call it a day.
Well, if you're motivated enough to do it yourself, do it. I mean, at the end of the day, either way, you're changing the water out, right?
Yep.
Do you want to spend that 20, 30 minutes to do it, or do you just want it automatic? It's basically what she comes down to. If you do like one large water change, like it's slightly more beneficial than tiny ones every day because theoretically you're rechanging some of that, but it's only like a very small percent. You're still like 90 something percent effective. So I just went with it. Even though I go through all this work to automate and do stuff, I like to say I'm a lazy reefer, but I spend endless hours building and automating and stuff. But I find that stuff more fun. So, all right, what else you guys got?
So I'll say thank you for the post you had on YouTube for the sand cleaner vacuumer.
Nice.
So as you saw, I went and built it and put it together per the specs you had. And I want to know what the trick is to make this thing start the siphon easier than it does.
That is the only pain in the butt about it. Basically submerge it and crack it open and let the canister fill with water first.
Yeah, I pre-fill the canister and then I try to pour with a cup as much water as I can and get it going. But once the thing does get going, the only problem I really have with it is in your post, you said a 50 micron filter.
Yeah.
And in my tank, like that gets filled and blocked pretty quick.
I mean, you can go bigger.
That's what I'm going to do once I burn through these and try a bigger one. But man, the stuff this thing pulled out once it got going,
huge,
like made a huge difference.
Yeah.
I may reduce the diameter of this a little bit, maybe thinking
it's probably
a little more, but
if with that too, like if you fill up the bottom, basically the problem is the pump can't prime if there's a big air bubble there. So too, if you can scoop the hose up full of water or like the big tube and just let it kind of siphon down, it will kind of push out the air bubble.
Right.
Yeah. Starting was a slight pain, but once it's going, you're pretty much good to go.
Yeah.
Just that initial priming part's a bit of a pain. You could put the pump on the other side of it, but the only problem is if you're sucking up any crud, then it's going through the impeller. The other way is completely safe because it's after the filter. But it would prime right away if you put it on the intake rather than the outtake. But yeah, it's the only side. You don't mind all the crud going through it.
Maybe I should buy 2 pumps and put one on each side. I upgraded the pump a little from the one you had in the video, thinking that would help, but maybe I'll just spend 30, 40 bucks and throw another one on the other side too.
Or just move your pump to the other side. It'll do the job. Yep. All right, guys. What else would you like to know? What else can we dig into?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask, like, obviously you take a lot of pictures or videos of your tank. I mean, I'm sure you have nice equipment for that, but I mean, any tips for like people that don't have either fancy video cameras or stuff like that to get good quality? Yeah, like what do you use from your phone to,
Half of them are just my cell phone. I mean, easiest way if you have LEDs, just whiten up your lights, cut out the blue. If not, just some form of a filter like anything orange or yellow will cut out the blues. Like yellow safety glasses, like either I find if your tank is super blue, orange ones work better. If not, like a light yellow works better. But like safety glasses, a little piece of cellophane, those little glasses you get at the shows, those little coral glasses, anything like that, just shooting through it makes a huge difference. So literally just find anything like that, or just whiten your lights up. I mean, that's the other option. If you want to tweak it, there is a really good app called Snapseed, and that one. So if you open up a photo to an image, and basically if you go to warmth, you can just drag it over and warm up the image, and that helps cut down the blues too. That's another fairly useful way to do it. But yeah, easiest thing, whiten the lights or just find something with a slight yellow orange tint, and it will drastically cut down the blues and make your photos tons better. Huge improvement.
You can use a brown filter too. I found a post somewhere, I forget who did it, but he did a test of all the different filter colors, and orange and yellow were good, but he found brown was even better.
Yeah, it depends on the color of your lights. Like I find if you have a whiter tank, like the orange, I don't like the color. It looks too fake, like it looks too off, or like yellow would be good. But yeah, like a light brown is basically the same as like a very light orange. But you just got to make sure it's not too extreme, or else that just looks fake and it messes with the colors and it's no good. If you want really fancy photos, one of the best ones I found, actually, this guy is a little underwater Panasonic camera. I got this guy used for like 150 bucks, but it takes amazing underwater macros. This thing does like a fabulous job for coral photos.
Yeah, underwater. I'm sure that would come out good pictures too.
Yeah, definitely. So like, I mean, a good chunk of the time, half the time I use my phone, but if I get really nice macros, it's usually with this guy. But he takes awesome photos. All right, what else?
Hey, Devin, I see that you have a water box, and I've watched your thing on converting the plumbing.
Yep.
Which I'll just say for 2 seconds here, I absolutely hate the water box plumbing and the fact that they use these
Metrics.
unions that are like proprietary. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
What you don't say in that YouTube video is any type of a union that actually screws into the water box bulkhead. I've heard and I've seen that the Coral View unions do.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I mean, I have a whole bunch of them, and I'm about to get brave and try to do it, but I don't know if you had any experience with others other than literally just kind of converting it, from union to union.
I honestly didn't even try. Coral View sells a metric to standard plumbing union. I bought that and just cut the pipe and just popped on the metric side, then convert it to standard piping on the other side.
Yeah, that's what I'm planning to do. Worst case, but the problem is it takes up so much room, and I'm going from tank to sump on the same floor, so I don't have much drop to work with. So I'm trying to not lose that. But I didn't know if you knew of anything that would screw right into it. But
no, I couldn't.
I actually.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, Devin. I have the Waterbox 130.4 and used the Coral View metric to metrics. And then I went to the BRS adapter after that and came out on my Waterbox. It worked perfect. Yes. But you have to buy the Coral View specific. I think they're actually Reef Octopus unions, I believe.
Yeah.
Metric to metric, and they're a full perfect match. I tested 4 different kinds, and those ones actually worked.
Sweet.
For mine.
Yeah, if you guys want to reach out to Nick, this is me on the forum. He had that issue of metric to standard on his water box, and I think he found unions or fittings on PVC fittings online or something like that. And
yeah, I think you're right.
Because I went down the road of the tank behind me is it's metric, and I wanted to convert it, and it was holy hell trying to find fittings. And Coral View was out of stock, and this and that. And Nick reached out to me and was like, "Hey, listen, this is where I went." So if you want some info on that, I'd say reach out to him.
Yeah, Paul, he was down last week, and I think we were looking at it, and I think you have to get the union to convert it, but I lose so much height by actually having to do that, and it just continues to drop it down further. I was looking for something that matches right up to the water box that might convert it at the fitting, but it looks like I'm going to have to take the hard way.
Well, I will buy the metric to standard one anyways. If it screws up, you're golden. If it doesn't screw up, then just chop it above that one. And
exactly, yeah.
And then you're basically the same amount of space, right? Because you're just cutting out a union, putting one a smidge higher.
Yeah.
That's what I would try anyways. Because then you got hope of it screwing up, and if it doesn't, you still got your backup plan.
Yeah. Once I cut into it, I'm done though. That's my concern. It's just like there's no going back once I get there. So.
Yep, exactly.
I was going to say, I had a similar problem with the GHL fittings for the flow adapters because they have this weird British standard pipe parallel thread. And it turns out if you get hold of George Fisher, which is a US manufacturer, they can actually make up custom unions. You just need the part numbers for almost any thread, and then they will mate the other side of the thread to standard imperial pipe fitting.
Get out.
Nice.
I posted in the Reef to Reef forums with specific part numbers for the GHL flow adapters probably like a year or two ago.
The guy from PVC Fittings told me that, all of them are just different casts. So it's just like whatever the lot batch of it is, they're all unique to that. But yeah, if somebody can fit it to it, then that'd be great because all it has to do is go tight and seal. But I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's awesome if they can. But yeah, like you said, though, with the batch, that's the problem is every brand is slightly different, even though you think it'd be the same thread, but nope. So it's a bit of a bugger.
So I just want to say something. I don't know if everybody can unmute themselves or not. It seems like some of you can, some of you can't. So a minute ago, I just asked everyone to unmute instead of sending chat questions.
I didn't even see the chat.
whatsoever. I am pathetic with any kind of electrical devices. It's amazing that I'm even allowed outside my house because I am.
Who was that?
Doug.
That's
maybe we
Doug.
should mute.
We'll mute him.
What else do you guys
awesome.
want to dig into? What else are you curious or want to learn more or find out more? What do you got?
I guess I'll ask if you started playing with any of the Coral View controller stuff that just came out.
I do have the Hydros and a bunch of the random accessories on it my frag tank beside me, so I have been. Overall, it's been pretty good. When I first got it, there was a few issues pairing the power bar to the Wi-Fi. Then once they did a firmware update, then it's actually really fun. I do have that. One of the sensors I love is because I always put those little skimmer sensors in, so they use the Auto Aqua or XP Aqua, whatever it is, one for the skimmer, which I think is an awesome one. That way, prevents your cut from overflowing. The rope leak detector is pretty cool because you have this massive string. You can just string around your whole sump or your stand or whatever, and then you have huge leak sensor area, which is pretty good. I have the auto top up kit. I haven't actually used that one yet.
Come on. Shake this.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, dude, you got
we can hear
wicked
you.
feedback.
Either that or
I don't
he's
know
sitting
why.
right next to his stump.
dedicated reef keeper.
Is that any better at all?
No dice.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Yep. Yeah. So I have a Hydros, a GHL, and a Neptune. So I have all the three main kind of ones on there. I had an E-Coral too for a few years. So any controller questions too, let me know.
So that question actually reminded me. I used to have a Neptune on my old systems, and in this system I have no controller. I have one Wi-Fi strip, and trying to keep it really simple. But on behalf of the reefing community, I want to apologize for that Neptune stream you were on when the Hydros came out, and they kept pushing you to like bash the Hydros in Coral View.
I'm not gonna lie, I expect it from.
I was like, I was close to buying a Neptune that was around Black Friday and all of that. I was close to just pulling the trigger and buying another one. And his attitude, asking you those questions over and over, trying to get you to say what he wanted to say.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw it, but I was like posting stuff in the comments like, he already answered your damn question. Leave him alone.
Oh, I know.
But
I expect it from him, so it's.
Yeah.
I know how he is. So
I get why he does it. It's his, it's his business, his livelihood, and everything. But come on already.
I don't give him. Yeah, but so I don't know. I mean, if I was smart in a regular reef keeper, I'd probably stick to one brand. But just because I do YouTube and everything else, I like to experiment. I like to try stuff. I want to be knowledgeable in everything. So I'm like, so I went from Refuge Gems, right? Then the Shader Reactor, and I'm running Tursker. Like, I just like to try and do everything possible just so I can compare it and find the best ways of what I like and don't like about it. But so I like to experiment lots. And I'm actually, to me, makes me happy to see more controller companies come out because it just makes everyone adds more competition, right? Which is better for us because they're going to compete more. Maybe prices get better. Maybe they're more innovative and come with more cool stuff to work with. Like on your tank, you're seeing the smart plugs, which I have a ton of buddies that do that. Like their whole tank is just smart plugs, and it definitely works. Like you're just lacking the based off an input, but for water change mode, whatever, turn all the stuff off. Like
Over there, right?
the majority of it was.
Like said, doctors and tank.
Have you ever tried or looked at the Reef Pie?
Yes, I have, and I previously had built not the Reef Pi, but I built an Android-based one at one point before I even had a controller. It was, I found some project. It was for like controlling sprinkler systems or something. So I took that and I modified it to be like a reef tank controller. So I had that to like automate all my plugs and work off float switches. And I even like took apart an auto feeder and took the feed button, tapped that in so I can trigger the auto feeder from it. And so I went pretty hardcore into that route. And then I came to the point where I was going to add like pH probes and all this stuff. And then Atlas Scientific had these little pH stamps you can buy. But by the time I bought all those, I was like, I guess buy a used controller for this price. So then I did. But I was pretty deep down that rabbit hole for a while. And then before I even had, back in the freshwater days, I built my own doser too with Arduino and little dosing pumps. Because I didn't even know about dosers back then, or it was like the earlier days of dosers. But so there's tons of DIY stuff, which I love doing. And if you got like some basic electronic stuff, like Arduino is like awesome for automating stuff.
Deven, what do you think about the new, maybe not new, but the different version of calcium reactors, the whole CO2 saturation of the Detasco type things versus your traditional, pump feed with the Geo or whatever you want to call them?
So, okay. So I've never used the automated one. I know discuss, whatever you say. You know what I'm talking about. I know they have it. Bill Land has his, Destaco. There you go. I know Bill Land has his version. Destaco does, and I think there's one other one. Basically, what those do is they use more of a max saturation. They use a lower pH, and part of how they do that is they have, they use more of like a marble, like more of a harder media that takes more CO2 to do it. The few people I know that have them seem to really like them. For me, the only problem is you can't really adjust the pH inside of it because that's how they work. Where personally, I like to, if possible, if you have a really big reactor, you can run a higher pH inside of it and still get all that ELK out of your effluent. That way you don't have as much of an impact on CO2 on your tank. So it's my only one little bit of a hesitation with going that route. But the few people I know that have one, they seem to like it because they're like, oh, a little more ELK, just push the button up or down. But with a regular one, if you have a parasolic pump, you can do the same thing just by increasing your effluent trip rate. Because I had like a Versa on mine. It's like, oh, my ELK's going down. Okay, add like 1 more mil or 2 mils to the flow, and then you're good to go. So I know there's a huge difference, but my limited experience with those ones. But the few people I know seem to like them. So
yeah, I just bought one from Bill, so we're gonna figure out what it does.
Okay, I said, how you like it so far? Don't know.
It's still in the friggin' box. I have no idea. I mean, my tank's still a little bit too young to worry about it, but
that's fair.
We'll see.
Let me know how you like it when the time comes.
Yeah.
This is kind of ridiculous, but I won off a Facebook contest, Cove calcium reactor, which cost me a small fortune to freaking get it here. But I have that one filled with media sitting right beside my frag tank, but I haven't had to use it yet. So same thing, like eventually the tank calc won't keep up and I'll have to kick it on, but sitting there waiting for the day that happens.
Yeah, I've got everything ready and I've got backups for all of it. I just don't need any of it. So it's kind of stupid, but it's quite redundant, no doubt.
That's fair. It's over time on a big tank. I mean, I personally think a calcium reactor is worth it because one, just the additives get expensive unless you're buying like industrial bulk, and it just keeps things so stable. Like with the big Geo one I have in my tank, like, my ELK swings between 0.1 over 12 hours because I have the Alkatronic on there testing every 12 hours. It goes beep. It's like 8.55, 8.65. It just backing down. So it just keeps it so stable. So I'm a big fan of them.
I just hate the pH probe calibration and the freaking drift that you'll see all the time with that stuff. It bothers me.
Yeah, that's fair. I honestly don't overly pay attention with the pHs in it. As long as my ELK is stable, I'm happy. If it drifts a bit, I don't care, as long as my ELK is stable. And it's like at the end of the day, like even with a lot of the stuff, I know a lot of people worry way too much about the exact precise numbers. Like if it's a little high, a little low, it doesn't matter as long as it's stable, right? As long as it's stable, your tank will adapt, it'll be happy. So at the end of the day, it's all about stability.
If you have the calcium reactor, what else are you dosing with your tank, or what else is going in it?
Okay, so frag tank, literally calc water, and that's it. I randomly will give a random little glug of other elements here and there. On the water box, I have the calcium reactor, which drips 24/7. And more recently, I added a bunch of the trace elements onto it, which is, let me actually find a picture of it because I don't even fully remember what's on it. Actually, I'll check the app. So I've been attempting to get all the trace elements handled via dosers and automated. And
is that like based off an ICP test?
Kind of, yeah. So I took some of the Brightwell ones because I already had a bunch. So they have their replenish. Sorry, I'm looking at my shelf trying to see what the bottles are. Replenish one. So that's kind of like a broad spectrum trace element. I have that one. I have the Chaeto Grow, which helps with some iron and molybdenum and a few things that help your Chaeto from growing. What else I got on there? So Chaeto Grow, Coral Color, Replenish, and Restore. So Restore, it was basically like a amino acid type of supplement. I know a lot of the WWC videos, they talked about using it for like helping corals, but basically when I read the bottle, I'm like, this is just amino acid. So I threw that on a dose or a small amount every day, just see how that goes. So that's basically what I have on there. The other two things I've been playing with, I'm still on the fence if they make a difference, but the KZ Coral Booster and Flatworm Stop, a lot of videos I've done tanks on, I see a lot of people using those, and they claim that it makes corals and crust faster and supposedly helps with their mucus coat, makes them a bit healthier. I'm still on the fence if that is true or not, but I've been dosing those at about a 50% of the recommended dose. The stuff's friggin' expensive, so I'm basically my main driver for using it on a half dose. And I know another guy that was running them for a while, and same thing. He said he absolutely saw results. He says, but it's like coral crack. He's like, well, if you stop, your corals will be pissed. Like they will not be happy for a few months. So that was part of the driver. I'm like, well, I'm not going to give it a full dose, and you can only have half of your coral crack essentially. And then so I've only been running about a 50% dose, and I've been doing that for a while. And things are encrusting, they're growing well. Whether or not that's related, I'm still on the fence. Supposedly the whole flatworm stop is just wormwood, so it's really easy to make your own. I know a few people have done that and they said it works well, but might try that eventually. So that's what's all on there. Probably more than I need to be dosing, but I'm trying to get that, perfect, everything's automated, happy, stable, ICP, happy zone thing. So I did recently send off an ICP test, which was kind of the first one after about a month or so of dosing trace elements. Then I'll probably give me kind of a baseline where everything's at, and overall it's pretty good. A few things I was lacking. And then probably in a couple months, I'll do it again and just kind of see how it's going and tweak from there.
I see you have like a mixed reef too with a little bit of everything. Do you want carbon on it or?
I do. I don't change it all the time. I do have carbon and GFO inside of a reactor, and I change it probably every 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 4 to 8 weeks. So I don't change it all the time, but I do add it once in a while. I did have ozone run in the tank. I did take it off. I put UV on the tank instead. Both of them worked very well for water clarity. And eventually, usually me changing the carbons, the wife saying it smells fishy or something. I don't even notice it, but she said something and I'm like, all right, it's time to change the carbon. That's basically my main driver is happy wife. But I recently just put ozone back on it just to kill any potential orders. So I run that for a little bit at night. So there is carbon. I don't change it all that often, just once in a while. More the other part of it too is because it's a mixed reef, some of the LPSs, they will do the bit of chemical warfare in the tank. So they'll release certain chemicals that will inhibit the growth of corals beside it. So that little bit of carbon once in a while just helps remove that, just so it keeps everything thriving overall.
Hey, Deven, I see that you run straight up LEDs.
I do.
Is it the fact that you don't believe the T5s are needed and that the whatever the radions or whatever ones you're using kind of supplies everything, or is it more for the simplistic floating canopy there that you have?
It's a mix. I definitely do love the floating light stand. Like in the past on the lagoon tank, like I did do the hybrid approach. So I had LEDs and T5s in that one. And the biggest thing for me, I didn't like seeing the T5 bulbs. Like the Noob Psych picture I had was pretty cool because you could angle it, but it was right beside my desk. So the corner of my eye, I could see the T5 bulbs that drove me nuts. I find them like just harsh and distracting on the eyes. Growth wise, it's hard to say. Certain corals will look a bit better under LEDs. Certain ones will look a bit better under T5. Growth-wise, I find they both work well. At the end of the day, it comes down to coverage. Like on my water box, I have 5 XR15s on it, right? So there's like one every 12, 13 inches, whatever it is. So there is still a lot of light. And I think because you have that blanket of light, I find it's pretty darn close to what you get out of T5 growth-wise. So I find you'll get slightly different coloration, but growth-wise, I haven't noticed a huge difference. But I think that mainly comes down to how much of a blanket of light you put over the tank. So basically it goes that way. So personal preference at the end of the day. On the tank in my living room, one big driver too with the water box is I just like that super clean look without having, big bulky stuff over the tank. And that, that's a big driver with originally getting LEDs, and then with that tank anyways has the G5s, which have amazing spread on it. So that I feel it is a pretty solid blanket on that one.
Yeah, that does look great. I've got 3 Gen 5s on my the 5-foot peninsula, and I just put 2 actinic bulbs in it.
Yep.
And I don't know. It's probably because I put them on there myself, and I think it looks better. But I don't know. We'll have to see. It's going to be a couple months before I get a feel on it.
If I had a canopy, I would likely, just for fun, probably throw a single bubble on each side, just as a little bit more filler. But
Yeah,
with an open canopy, like a rimless tank, I don't think there's as much of a benefit to justify all the extra clutter and heaviness above the tank. So if you have a canopy, I mean, why not, right? It's all hidden. But if it's completely open, I like the more minimal, sleeker design, which is, I mean, part of that's personal preference. But either way, they're both going to grow corals.
How do you clean the glass on the stair side of that thing? Jeez.
I spread eagle
the same
in the
thing.
banister and the little edge on the side of the tank. Where is it? If you look. So I have a flipper max on both sides of the tank. You can see that little like rail there around the edge. I left myself that couple inches. I'll just like spread eagle across there. And I can stand on the stairs and reach like all but like that last little like foot of the corner on the back left there, because I'm fairly tall. But if I want to like reach in the tank, then I'll like spread eagle and do it that way. So it keeps it interesting.
I hate cleaning glass. It's terrible.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, that's honestly one of the main drivers of me wanting to try UV, was to see if I could not clean the glass as much. But sadly, I still have to clean it. But I also have excessively high nutrients that I'm trying to deal with. So that's probably a good chunk of that battle right there. And that's one thing I realized from the Mastertronic is how bad my nutrients are, and it rubs it in every week when it tests. And so it's making me deal with it.
That's funny.
Yep.
All right. If anybody hasn't private or direct messaged me their screen name, do so now. Because I still have some people. I'm not going to call you out here. So if you're listening, send me a chat message of who you are on the forum.
Previous question, Deven, what are the keys to a successful mixed reef? All right, running carbon once in a while certainly doesn't hurt. Any reef tank, really, it's just stability, right? Keeping your parameters stable within the happy ranges. Carbon once in a while for a mixed reef helps. I feel ozone helps as well. Not that it's necessarily required, but it does help break down organics and other stuff, which is similar to carbon. It's not quite the same. Carbon absorbs, ozone breaks stuff down. But just making sure you're dealing with that coral warfare is, at the end of the day, the biggest thing for a mixed reef versus just like a one species specific type of reef. Just scrolling through, see if I missed anything else. More flow for SPS. SPS definitely love their flow. So far on my tank, I have 2 MP60s on the water box, blowing the faraways. I've tried really, really hard not to put pumps anywhere else on those 3 sides of the glass to keep that nice peninsula look. One day I may have to add more pumps, but so far those 2 big beastly pumps are doing a good job on it.
You have a new quarantine?
I do now. I never used to. I had a not so fun incident where I lost a bunch of fish when I was upgrading my tank. So I successfully lasted 5 or 6 years without a big issue. And I had 2 temporary tanks. I was waiting for the new water box, and a local guy was importing some fish from like California or somewhere. And he has, what was it? A golden angelfish. Anyways, a couple of like rare fish. And I was like, oh yeah, this would be sweet. Put them in and added it to the temporary tank, and wiped out almost every fish in that tank. So that sucked. And that was right around Christmas time. So that was a lovely Christmas headache to deal with. So I've learned my lesson, and I've started quarantining since then.
Yeah,
so,
velvet's terrible. That sounds like velvet.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Yep. 5 or 6 years, not an issue, perfectly fine. Then of course, one time something happens, and learn my lesson. So now I do.
Live and learn, right?
Yep, exactly. So with that,
So Deven, looks like there's a couple questions here in the chat. One here is, ever run a sulfur reactor or think about running one?
I have not. I have friends that do have them. Sulfur denitrator does a wonderful job of absorbing nitrates. Basically, you just run very slow flow through it, and I mean, from what I've heard, they've worked really well. Richard Aficionado has another cool one that he's doing with, I think he calls it sulfur denitrator. No, what's he call it? Anyways, it's basically like a little aquarium where he puts the water into it, and he doses, is it like an ethanol type of source?
Yeah.
with a power head in it, it literally strips out all the nutrients, and then it does a water change to the back to the tank. So you take a chunk of water, you remove all the nutrients, and then you water change it back to your tank and do it again, which is another really cool system, which I would probably try if I had the space to it, but my stand is like every inch of it is like maximized, so there's no hope of that. That's another really cool one. I'm mind blanking on the name with it, but I did a video with him about it. So another really cool system. But I have not personally used either, but they do look pretty cool.
All right, I got one more here from Jadis. He's planning on upgrading his power heads. He's looking for the small profile. What's your take on them? Tank is a 90-gallon 4-foot.
90-gallon 4-foot. Okay. Low profile. So I like the Vortex because I like no wires in the tank. I like this super clean. The Nero pumps I also think are pretty awesome because they pack a lot of punch for how tiny they are. In a smaller tank, like the Nero 3 is literally like, I have one in my sump just to like mix everything up, but it's like tiny, like ultra tiny. But on the Nero 5, when I originally got it, I put in my 6-foot tank, and on 100%, I was able to pulse and move the whole tank. So I was really impressed with the flow for how tiny it was. So if you had like a 90-gallon, like a standard one, I would probably, if your back was blacked out, I'd probably just put a couple of those on the back while shooting forward, and you get a ton of flow out of those little guys, and they're super low profile.
You could go with the cheaper option of the Jabo SLWs too.
Have you used them?
I have 2 of the bigger ones of those on my tank now, 1 on each side, along with 2 of the Tunzi SDLC or whatever Wi-Fi ones. So I have them alternated with the Jabos, top and bottom, and then the other ones on the other side. But
are you happy? Are they working well?
Yeah, they work great. The only thing I had to buy was I bought a couple. Somebody was printing 3D cages for that slip over them and go flush to the glass.
Nice.
I had a couple fish getting a little too close to the the backside intake, and it worried me. So, but they've been working great so far. It's been 4 months or more, I think.
Okay. With Jabo stuff, dosers, I mean, it's hard to beat the Jabo dose for the price. It's cheap. It works really well. Not like ultra precise, but for what it is, it's hard to beat. The return pumps I found long term super solid. Power heads have been hit and miss with me. I find some of them have bit the dust on me long term and stuff, but the return pumps have been amazing. Like they just keep on trucking. Power heads hit or miss. Dosers been solid. So yeah, so I was just curious what your experience was with that one. There was a Coral Box one that I had that was very similar, like the hockey puck style design. And with that one, same thing. Like it was amazing for a while, but then it started to get squeaky and random stuff and replays impellers and different things. So up front, they're all awesome, but long term's mixed bag for me. So keep me updated how that works long term. I've never used one, so I'm curious. Yeah, SW20. I did look at those online. They look super duper similar.
Deven, you run socks or you go sockless?
Filter rollers now.
Oh, God.
I can't go back.
Both the roller kick. Everybody's jumping on that.
It's okay with socks. I had like 12 plus 15 socks, and every 3 or 4 days you got to pull your sock out, throw it in a 5-gallon bucket, and at the end of the month you got this big bucket of nasty socks, and I got to like spray them with the hose and wash them. And it's just so much work. Filter roller, literally change it and ignore it for like just shy of 2 months. Do it again, takes you 5 minutes. Just not, getting the wife angry with using the washing machine and dealing with the big bucket of stinky socks and doing it. I don't know. I think they're awesome. They're not the cheapest thing up front, which sucks, obviously. The other downfall is you got a consumable, right? You got to buy a new roll. If you're extra motivated, you can wash the filter rollers. I've talked to a few people who've done it and they've washed, use it 4 or 5 times before they'll throw it out. So, I mean, you could wash it and then, build a little jig with a drill or something and re-roll and reuse it. So that is an option if you want to do it on the cheaper end. But yeah, buying them sucks. But once you have it, you'll never want to go back.
And you still run a pump in your sump just to churn it up? Like, are you getting stuff to pass by?
No. So I have mine going through off my drains, right? So all the water filters through it. I do have a sump I have a little Nero 3 in my sump in here, which I had just from a prior tank, so I threw it in here, but I'm using it just I'm dripping kalkwasser to it just to like mix it all up and stuff. So they precipitate from there.
Evan, talk about the filter roll. How do you like the Geo sump overall?
It is a very beautiful sump. It was not cheap, but it is beautiful. It was a hard bite. It was like the most expensive freaking thing I feel like I've spent on the tank in ages, but it is, I have a photo of it. But it is a very beautiful sump.
They use the Clarity rollers, right?
Yeah. So
okay,
it's kind of half.
Yeah, it's probably dream setup for me because those things, they're beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It was freaking expensive, and me being in Canada, the shipping just about killed me. But
yeah,
I've always wanted like a sump with like lids and all like pristine and pretty and all that jazz. And this is like my last upgrade for ages, so I decided to splurge a little bit on it. But yeah, it does use the Clarity built into it. The only one slight downside is the filter roll doesn't last quite as long. It's nice because it's built in. Like there's a cover on the dirty side. Like it's super pristine, looks amazing. Now, the filter rollers are more efficient the higher you put them because you have more water pressure forcing all those particles through it. So if your filter roll is higher, you'll actually get a bit more life out of it. So I got a little bit less life out of the roll because it sits so low and it's the full sump basically.
Okay.
That's the only one slight con of it, but I mean, it's a fair trade for built-in, everything just is, I don't know, it's just nice. But yeah, overall, I mean, it works really, really well.
The Geo stuff's so nice too.
Yeah, like his craftsmanship on it is just amazing. You know, all the lids, everything fills in. And with the calcium reactor, like I sent him my little S2 pump that I had to build onto it so that, because I want it like dead quiet. Like I had the Vertex one before, which was, it was nice, but there's always a slight pump rattle. It drives me nuts all the time. So
yeah, I have a Geo calcium reactor, and I saw you with the S2 on. I'm like, oh, that's such a good idea. I'm jealous. My next one will be like that because I hate the pump that's on it.
Yep, that's the same thing I've had on previous. Yep. So it feels so like absurd and overkill, but I'm like, I want this tank to be dead silent. So
I love it. Any noise bugs me too. I get it.
Yeah, it's been stupid the amount of things I've upgraded over the years just to make my tank quieter. Like it's probably a terrible obsession, but you need a hobby.
Is the Geo sump that good? I just bought a 5-foot advanced acrylics one, which is all kind of sealed up and stuff. What's good about the Geo?
I've never seen advanced acrylics, so I can't say, but it's just amazing build quality. Like, I don't know, there's just all these little finishes, you know, like there's like built-in heater holders. All the chambers are like very well thought out. Like I sketched it up and then he tweaked it. And, you know, like there's the built-in reactor, which, you know, 2 bulkheads pop it out. Like everything's just buttoned up and I don't know, it's just nice design. There's little probe holders all throughout it. There's little dosing bulkheads all out. Like, I don't know. It's, I don't know how to explain it. It's just nice.
Advanced acrylics looks beautiful, but they don't do a filter roller one yet, I don't think.
Yeah. I was just
going to say. That's a big thing. Yeah.
I don't have the filter roller, which I didn't necessarily need it, but all the things, Deven, that you're talking about there, they're built into those ones. And I mean, they're nice, but yeah, no built-in filter roller on it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need it, but it's nice to have.
Yeah.
This is my last upgrade for a long time, so I just kind of wanted to make it like extra pristine and happy and pretty. I kind of do things excessively at times, so I'm not the best person always to do it, but I've kind of, whatever I do for a hobby, I kind of go all out with it. So Reef Tank has been my obsession for many years now. It's an addiction. And almost every tank upgrade has been fueled by amount of coral space. So you need more tank, you need more coral space. And even like every tank I've learned too, like even the aquascape, right? Like my old tank had this big arch, which I loved, but it was very limiting for coral space. So like it looked really cool, but you only have that tiny, you know, 4 inches of arch space for all your coral, right? So there's all these other areas. So even this one, as I'm scaping the tank, I want to look cool from the side, but I also want to look top down and make sure every spot is kind of tiered outwards so that you get capitalize how much coral space you actually have long term. And then same thing with, do I have a side photo of the tank? Just for like the flow in the tank, same thing. Like I have a side photo. Need more photos? I can kind of tell, but I kind of tiered the rock higher at the one side and kind of tiered it down a little bit. And I did more like LPS this side and a bit more acros higher up. So I kind of tried to tier it so that I knew my high flow would be right at the far end here. And then it slowly got lighter flow as the tank goes on. And so, so it's all these little things that you kind of, every upgrade, you kind of ask yourself, you know, what would you do differently? What would you do? And, you know, every one you get a little more custom, a little more tweaked. And it's like any hobby, it's just the progression of your obsession.
And Deven, I love your AI Fuge little flaps there, the light flaps.
Thank you.
Those things are genius.
Thank you. I was tired of cleaning LGO to my skimmer, which kind of developed that one. So
Yeah,
most DIY
perfect.
are solving something that like was bugging me or annoying me. Like another one I made was just for like the Voss containers. My computer died and I got to rebuild it one day. But I made like this like one little holder that held all the bottles in it, or like the Kimura that I used to use for my calcium reactor, like a little thing that sat on the corner of the sump to hold it because it's out of space, right? There's a will, there's a way. You always find a way to make it work.
Absolutely.
The one thing that amazes me is how I keep managing to cram more gear into my stand. Like that, the Mastertronic, like that thing was a big beast. Like compared to the Alcatronic, I'm like, how the heck am I going to fit this? Literally ripped out my whole like controller cabinet, everything. Had to rewire like half my things. I took out the back half of the controller cabinet because it was like robbing those few inches. And then I remounted all my power bricks to the back wall of the stand. Just redid everything, just like squeeze this last piece in. Which at first I was like looking if I can mount it down below with my laundry and like wherever else I can try and add it to squeeze it in there. But yep, there's a will, there's a way. There's somehow always a way to squeeze in something else, which makes me sometimes question if I just overcomplicate my tank. But overall, it's worth it. It's true.
You said earlier that you had some nitrate, you had some nutrients in your tank. Are you a believer that nutrients in a tank are needed, or like 0-0 kind of across the board? I mean, I've seen great tanks on both sides, and I just wonder where you stand on that.
0 is bad. You never want 0. Corals, like a plant, absorb nitrate and phosphate, so they do need it. It is a food source, and if it is 0, you're starving out your corals, and eventually they will go down. So you always need some, right? It can be super low, but you always need some. You never want 0. Now mine are like excessively high. Like I think my nitrates are like 50 something, and my phosphates were like 0.18. So personally, I like phosphates less than 0.09. So like 0.3 to 0.09 is a happy range for me, and like 10 to 20 nitrates. That's where I like to be. I feed with a shovel, and I have a lot of big tangs and big fish in my tank, which is part of my problem. And I know this. I just need to get better, feed less, export more. So I don't know how well it works yet, but I got this stuff I'm trying. It seems like some form of a carbon dosing. So I added this a few days ago. It claims the fastest, most effective nitrate phosphate remover. So this says it treats 77 gallons. My tank's 200 gallons because I don't want to be too hardcore fast, but I added this. I'm curious to see if this works, but it's some kind of like a carbon dosing type of thing from what I can tell. So curious.
What about the bioactive tropic marin salt for carbon dosing?
I have not tried that. Nowhere local to me sells that. And shipping,
yeah, I guess, yeah.
Just doesn't happen. But yeah, I don't know why, but no one sells tropic marin near me. Got to go with
one for you, Deven. We got a question here in the chat. Have you ever thought about replacing all the power bricks with a DIN rail and DC power converter driven from a higher AC/DC converter?
I sure have. I just haven't found
Me too.
yet. I even talked to Ecotech a few times. I'm like, give me like this one big one with a big octopus
with a bunch of cords. That would be great.
Yeah, I've actually asked them about that multiple times. They're like, it'd just be so expensive for that one big one. You're like, no one to buy it. Like, I would be all over it. But yeah, I would love to negate some of those bricks because I have like, 5 XR15 plus there's 5 bricks right there, plus the power heads, plus all the testers. Like, there's so many bricks in the stand. If you guys are using a controller, one thing that I do love to do is you can buy those octopus kind of cables. So it's like one plug and it goes to like 2 or 4 or 5, whatever connectors off of it. So I use those on all my like group like equipment. So like on my tank with the 2 MP60s, then I have both MP60s going to one plug, right? I have all 5 Radions going to one plug. Like I like to group like equipment that way you're not wasting those overly priced.
All the plug, yeah.
So, where do you buy those plugs at?
It's Amazon. Like
Amazon.
I think it's like, is it C14 or C? What do they call them?
You would puke if you saw my electrical cabinet.
Is it scary?
Oh my God. You could get lost in it. It's bad.
Yeah, there you go. So stuff like that, right? So you get these kind of cables and then you can split it, right? So instead of one cable, you can get ones out of the, maybe it's C13. I don't remember the actual name. But I believe C13.
That's cool looking.
That is really nice.
But yeah, see, like there you go. See, there's one. So like something like that, it's like $10. Now I can plug both my power heads into one outlet. Right? You still have the bricks, but at least you're not wasting overly priced controller outlets. And I have one that goes to, and what's that one? That one's 4 of them, right? So like on one tank, I have like 4 of them splitting for all my lights, so they can all go to one outlet. So
That doesn't affect the performance on the product at all?
no, basically, if you were running all your lights, everything at 100%,
Yeah,
right?
they're hot.
Yeah, you
That's
just
what I
need
was
to,
thinking.
yeah. So each like a household outlet is rated for 15 to 20 amps, depending on how it's wired on average. And same thing with like I know the Neptune power bar, like each one of those, I think it's 10 amps max. The whole power bar is only 50. You just need to make sure you're not overloading an individual outlet, either on the controller or on your plug. That's the biggest thing. And
yeah, if you're running 50%, it shouldn't be too bad then, right?
yeah, exactly, right? So like I have my lights, you know, they're 60% or 80% part of the day, but they're only drawing, you know, 400 watts, whatever it is. It's not nearly enough to overload the one outlet. So that's the only thing you got to keep in mind if you're merging a bunch of equipment. But most of the DC stuff isn't as power hungry, so you can get away with doing that.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, but great way to save those overly priced outlets.
Yes, sir.
And then two with like the controllers versus non-controllers. I'm always back and forth. Like I know my tanks are overly complicated, and half the time I wonder if I should try and just simplify it. But I like automating everything possible, so it's a rabbit hole. You don't need it, but it's nice to have.
Yeah, I like the way you did that light fixture on your tank on the peninsula.
Thanks.
I was thinking about something like that on a Waterbox 6025. I'm about to start.
Nice. It's pretty easy to build it. I mean, I've done a couple of videos on those. Extruded aluminum isn't too bad. I think that cost me about $180 to build it. I mean, it's Canadian, so it's probably cheaper for you guys. But it just gives it such a sleek look. The only like I could hide all the wires in the channel. Like it just that look, especially if you're in a peninsula, it just really adds like a nice little extra touch to it.
You have that on the wall or on the back part of the stand?
Okay, so this one is bolted to the wall.
Okay.
I just used a couple of L brackets and bolted it one side to a stud. I just used drywall plugs on the other side. The one on my frag tank it's a steel stand, and I just had a 2-inch tube in the middle. And so I could just drop it right into the stand, and I just put a single hole through it. So I just put a single T-nut in just to hold it so I can raise it or lower it and just tighten it up.
Excellent.
With that, I went with 15-15, which is 1.5 inches, which was basically what I worked out to have very little sag. You just got to look at how much deflection and how much you're kind of delivering it out, especially a bunch of heavy light fixtures on it. Kind of depends on how far you can push it. But yeah, it's very, very minimal sag for how far it is out. So, but it just gives us a cool floaty look.
Yeah, that looks sharp. I mean, the tanks look sharp as is already, but that takes it to another level.
Thank you. Yeah, that I've more than anything, people always ask, "Where'd you buy the light bar? Where'd you buy the light bar?" I'm like, just make one. Yeah,
not super sleek.
Yeah, not too hard to make. And if you order it too, you can also on the one side, like I think I had it threaded on the vertical bar and just pop a screw through it. But there's all types of different ones, and you can get it all pre-cut, everything, literally just put it together like a Lego.
Yeah, that's super light too.
Yeah.
The heavier there will be, the lights will be more heavier than the bar itself.
Yeah. Still a good chunk of weight, because I mean it's still 1.5 inches of aluminum, but
yeah,
it's definitely a good way to go.
Absolutely.
Anything else you guys want to know?
What's your dream fish, Deven?
I don't know.
That's a hard one.
A lot of the really cool fish that I like would eat my coral, so I'll never buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
One that I would add, but I won't buy because it's overly priced. I really like the Lenardi wrasses. They're like blue and gold. They're really pretty, but they're like $1,000, and I could never justify that. But yeah, a lot of the super cool ones, they'll eat my coral, and I just will never put one in. What's your dream?
Seems like all the pretty ones eat coral.
Yeah, that's true. So, I don't know. Apparently, yellow tangs are super rare now. I got 3 in there. Yeah, no, overall, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with everything. Is like I honestly, in my current house where I am, I don't think I'd change much. Like I'm happy with everything I've done so far, and unless I move somewhere and can go some crazy giant in-wall tank, I don't know. I'm very happy and content for now. It's just the current status of life dream build. So,
favorite stick or coral or something?
So many. I find coral hard because I'm addicted and I love all coral, so I feel like can't discriminate against them. I have like certain little obsessions. Like I love all the gonies. So I have a little gonny garden. I love rock flowers. So I have like a big rock full of like rock flowers on there. I'm definitely addicted to acros as well. My previous favorite was the Palmer's Blue Millipora. For whatever reason, I just really like that one. I do have a few, like the Orange Passion's another really cool one because it's just the bright orange polyps, looks really cool. Let's see what else I have photos of on here. But like there's lots of other ones that are starting to grow really well. Like the Fox Flame looks pretty cool. And
It's nice.
this guy's starting to turn really pink in my tank, which is looking good. Yeah, I like all corals. I can't discriminate.
Hey, Deven, have you noticed a difference in coral coloration and or growth running high at pH levels?
It does seem to grow a bit quicker. I definitely do agree with that. The stuff that I haven't really told anyone how to mix it because it's sketchy and dangerous, but I have experimented with potassium hydroxide, which does amazing things for pH, but again, it ups your potassium too fast to be a long-term solution. Having that 8.3, 8.4 definitely does help with coral growth, though. Like it is a legit advantage. So pH is kind of like a logarithmic scale. So every little increment has growing results. So I do think it is worth doing what you can to increase your pH. You know, like I've upped my refugium. I run my light longer, run a little more intense to suck out a bit more. You mean if you take your effluent from your calcium reactor, you know, like right now mine's dripping into my refugium. I know Chris from ACI, he'll drip his into a skimmer because it helps get that extra little bit more out of it, right? To help the gas exchange. So all these little things add up, and it does make a difference with coral growth and stuff. Is it night and day? I wouldn't say it's night and day, but it definitely can grow faster. And I know the people I know that I've been talking to that are pushing the boundaries are telling me there's definitely some big improvements from having those elevated pH levels.
Yeah, my house is loaded with CO2. I barely break 8.
Yeah, this thing has
Brutal.
been before I had a brutal thing there. Like mine in the summer when I started closing up everything, the windows and stuff, my pH is tanked. Like this was the start of my like war on pH battle. It was down to like, what was it? 7.8 was like my high. It was brutal for a while. Let's see if I can find
That's what I hate about the winter time.
Yep.
It's like, kills you.
You can go back long enough in the graphs to find it. I think it was October-ish, so I might be pushing it.
Quick question on flow for like a water box peninsula. If I was to put 2 MP40s, one on each side, and a gyre in the middle, like where the overflow's at, would that be overkill? Because I'm trying to eliminate all that ugly look. I just want to see the tank.
Yeah. Okay. Ideally, if you put one on each end of the tank, that is going to be like your best bet. But again, if it's a standard tank, I mean, perfect. If it's a peninsula, I'm always hard pressed to put something on that far side.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 MP60s on mine on the one side. My other thought was putting 2 gyres vertical to kind of wrap
Okay.
it. That was another thought I had. A previous peninsula tank, I put 2 MP40s on there, and I had the Jabo gyre just underneath the overflow. They all work fairly well. The one trickier part with a peninsula tank is generally you'll get a little bit of a protein layer build up on the far end of the peninsula.
Yeah.
At the very end. And that's always one thing I know. So I played with my flow a lot to get rid of that. And sometimes too, like you could just run one side of the pump a bit higher just so it circles it more and gets rid of it, just so that they're not
more rotation, like.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all good.
Mm-hmm. The other consideration too, if you're doing peninsula too, right? Like just the way you stack your rock and your coral. Like I still have a lot of LPS lower, but the stuff higher up is more acro zone, and you know the torch is more like the far 2/3 of the tank, like stuff like that. Like I still do have a ton of LPS down in the bottom corner here, but they're getting more the undertow and not the direct current.
Yeah, definitely an open aquascape would be much better like that. That's where everything flows to.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, if you did go the bare bottom route too, you can also put pumps lower and shoot across the bottom. There's lots of play with. I couldn't bring myself to do bare bottom in that just because I love the look of sand. I just like that natural.
Me too, and I like gobies, so that would kill me.
Exactly.
Other than that, I would go bare bottom, no problem.
Yeah, it would be hard. I did it in the frag tank, and I've been dealing with all these random algae issues on and off. Same thing. It's still a new tank. It's still young. And of course, I'm dealing with all that because it's probably half because it's bare bottom. So I would definitely say the sand does help make it easier.
maybe a little less sand.
Yeah. But if you like those gobies and stuff and like those little barriers, you gotta understand.
Yeah, you're always gonna get something. You get them on one side, not the other, like that. Vice versa. Yep.
Yep. Or just hammer the flow and it will just make a big mountain on one side eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. What else you guys got? Any other random questions?
What do you do besides Reef Dudes, Deven?
What do? I do IT stuff for the day job, which sucks up far too much of my life. Reef tanks and doing Reef Dudes takes up another huge chunk of it because it takes a lot of time to create and edit and do these videos every week and live streams and all that jazz. So that sucks up a good chunk of time. Snowboarding is one hobby, so usually every Sunday I go snowboarding. I threw a little clip in my last videos for fun. And my other latest thing is one wheeling, so that's kind of fun. It's kind of like summertime snowboarding. So
nice.
I splurged on one of those on Black Friday, so that's been my sanity during like, I don't know, COVID times.
Good stuff.
So, going a little cruise by myself is good. Little sunshine, little fresh air is good for you.
I have another non-reef related question.
Ask away.
Who did it, and what was the murder weapon in the game of Clue you were playing the other day?
Ooh, I don't know. We had a bunch of rounds actually.
Oh, nice.
Good question. Yeah, so we have 2 exchange students, so we have random game nights and stuff. So that's fun.
Hey, Devin, I got a question for you. So what's it like buying reef equipment in Canada in comparison to the States? Is it more expensive up there?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, everything comes from the States. Then we have that lovely border duty tax on everything. So in general, I'm going to say gear is definitely cheaper in the States. There's that whole duty and our money's worth like nothing. So that sucks. So it's, gear costs more. Fish and coral, I find is hit or miss. Like there's certain things where like, you know, when I'm in Florida, I bought a ton of rock flowers because they were dirt cheap there, right? I'm getting them for like 20, 30 bucks. For back here, they're like $100. So like that, certain things are super cheap. But then again, I was down at a show and there's like, what's the not the Hellfire torch, Dragon Soul torch. Like that, they want like $600-800. I'm like, oh, those are like $100 back home. So like there's certain things. So I find corals very skewed. I find almost like the designer corals are more expensive there and they're cheaper in Canada, but the gear is definitely cheaper there. So it's a trade-off. And certain
big import tax. Yeah, import tax when it crosses the border into Canada. Is that where the big cost increase is?
There is. I mean, there's like the exchange rate of the dollar, right? Like it's $1.30, $1.25,
Right.
30 Canadian to like $1 US, right? So there's that. Plus, you know, if I do an order from like BRS or somewhere, then I still have like, usually there's like another $40 of like custom fees on top of it. Like it's all those little things that just add up. So
sure,
you get you.
Yeah, they definitely know how to get you.
Oh, they do.
Mm-hmm.
Every month.
That's true.
But yeah, the coral I find interesting, the difference in prices. I find that's all over the map, completely random. So it helps that I know some wholesalers and stuff. So I get certain deals on some things, but for the most part, I honestly just trade people now. That's the nice part. Like when you first get the hobby, it's more expensive, but once you have a tank full of corals and stuff that's growing well, you just trade people. And now I have a buddy that bought a local fish store. So I'm like, oh, what do you need? I'll trade you some coral for it. So rather than buying stuff, I can trade stuff now, which is good, which helps quite a bit.
Sure.
Yep.
Well, we grow out all our coral so we can trade the frags for stuff.
Exactly. It's a good way to do it.
That's the way to do it.
Yep. So how's all the equipment / fish and coral out in your guys' area?
Depends on who you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. The hit or miss.
Thing.
Like you say.
Yeah, it's true. It's like that everywhere, I guess. It's the same thing.
It's funny you talk about the controllers. You would think with all the new controllers coming out that maybe it would drive them down a little to be a little more competitive, but it just seems to keep driving them up instead of down.
Yeah. So, okay, here's a question. How many of you guys run a controller, or how many just keep it super simple?
I'm super simple. I'm about to get into the controller land, though.
Are you?
Just for ease of mind.
Yep, that's fair. I think
simple, everything
GHL.
Yeah, simple. This year,
GHL FTW.
yeah.
DHL.
You guys like the GHL, eh? So I think GHL is better built. The programming is more of a pain, though. So this is where I've been like debating it all, because I get asked constantly, you know, which one's better, which one do you like, and they all have their pros and cons. Like I think Neptune has the best software, but I think GHL has superior hardware, right? So it's a trade-off. Like it took me a while. I'm very techie. It took me a bit to wrap my head around how to program the GHL. Like now I get it, but at first it was definitely more of a hurdle. So, but at the end of the day, they all do similar things.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they're all really
This year's
name.
Yeah, this year's a little more of a write-off, but last year, or I guess technically the year before now, when I was actually going to shows every month, I was out of town constantly. Having a controller and be able to check on things remotely is like a huge peace of mind. Or if I'm like, you know, FaceTime the wife, oh, can you feed the fish? Hit a button and it kicks off feed mode, right? Like that stuff's nice. Or I'll get in heck if the tank's beeping. I'm like, okay, let me reset the filter roller or the skimmer or whatever it is, right? So I find all that stuff was really useful, but it's not as big of a deal if you're around all the time. But if you're not around, it's nice to have that kind of backup fail-safe level to everything. And the one complaint I have with some of the controllers is if the modules aren't smart enough to do stuff on their own and the brain dies, you're buggered. Everything's down, right? So I'm more of a fan of having multiple independent systems and having the controller just act as the backup to it. So if that independent system fails, then the controller steps in to take over and deal with something, right? It's like you have a heater controller, then your controller, and that does all the heavy lifting, right? And your controller is there as a backup if that fails. Or same thing, right? You have an independent ATO, and if that fails, okay, then maybe it shuts it off if it's overfilling or not filling, something alerts you. So I think that's where a controller really shines, is giving you that like security blanket for when something does eventually go wrong or fail or isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. So don't put your eggs in one basket. Diversify.
Yep, learning that now.
Same with power heads. I mean, having a battery backup on them goes a long way too. I don't know how power outages are where you guys live. To me, they're really not that bad. But the odd time you do have one, having flow in your tank can save it. So I know a lot of people don't do battery backups on it, but I do think that is an important thing to do. Even if you have like a little cheap computer UPS on just one, right? Just something to just keep flow moving in the tank when all else fails. As I'm slightly procrastinating, because I have one sitting beside my frag tank that's not plugged in.
It's I'll tell you one thing having a controller when you go away is you tend to look at your tank way too much.
Yep.
And it always seems when you do go away, something does in fact happen that, you know, most of the time you can control it. You know, your calcium reactor goes squirrely. But it runs great until you go away.
Yep, pretty much. I know, when you're not there to fix it. So that's the nice thing. If you can remotely tweak it and fix it, then you're back in business. But like even like the calcium reactor. So like I have the controller like with the pH probe and the solenoid turned off if need be, but at the same time I will try and tweak the bubble rate so the solenoid doesn't do anything. It's just there as a backup, right? You know, if every once in a while it tweaks on or off, that's fine. But then it's not doing a bazillion cycles because you're not relying on it to go on and off every 20 minutes, right? So that's why I always try and make things be their own little mini thing and then just keep the next level as a backup just because less wear and tear. And
fail safe.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're not really relying on it as much. So it kind of limits your risk to an extent. I'm my own mailman, so whenever I see a miss, I check Fusion with what's going on. Beauty. It's true though. You do check it all the time when you're away. And the funny thing is too, because I have the GHL and the Hydros on my frag tanks. Sometimes I'm like, I check them both. I'm like, do they agree? Do they compare? It's ridiculous, but it's true. The other big addiction lately too is the auto testers now. That's one I check all the time now. So the Alcatronic. I've seen the Elk every 12 hours. Now the Mastertronic. So every once in a week, get the full baseline. It's glorious. So the next one good thing is the Versa pumps. Whenever they add Wi-Fi to that, they'll be nice. They can actually do it from outside the house. That's coming eventually. But.
Yeah, I see it. I see a lot of things changing in the whole hobby to begin with. It's going to be crazy.
It is.
You just keep adjusting as you go.
Yep, it's true. I don't know. It's crazy. Like there's just so much more high tech stuff out now compared to like 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
Which one aspect, I mean, it costs you a small fortune to have it all, but the other aspect, having it makes your life easier and it gives you higher chances of keeping everything happy, right? Or stuff. At least like for me, like the auto tester, like I know I'm terrible at testing. So having something that, you know, every once a week tests everything for me, it's going to catch stuff that I'm not going to catch for months because I've been slacking on testing. So, I mean, whether it's not as worth it, I mean, really depends on the person, but all that stuff I think is going to make more people more successful long-term in the hobby, which is going to be better as we can pull less from the ocean and it's going to be more in the hobby. So I think there's lots of good advantages coming from it. But
yeah, auto testers are a game changer.
Oh, huge. Do any of you guys have them?
Yeah, I got the Trident, and man, my tank has never been so stable.
Nice. That's
Damn,
awesome.
I love it.
Do you let it control your dosing, or do you just monitor and tweak it from what it says?
Yeah, I run a calcium reactor, so basically I just tweak if I need to. I can tell when it needs more calcium, you know, and more alkalinity. But I mean, other than that, it's pretty set it and forget it.
Yep. Awesome. So like one thing too, which that's so that one tests the calcium and magnesium. So I have the Alcatronic, which only tests elk, but that one's just, it's cheap for reagent, which I like. So it's like way cheaper to run. So I have that one running. But the one thing I've learned is I never test magnesium calcium anymore because I'm like, oh, elk's automated. The rest are fine. So I mean, every once in a while, we just do a manual test to make sure everything's still good. And then recently, when I've been lowering my calcium reactor because of dosing this nasty stuff, then I noticed, okay, my calcium was getting low. So I'm like, oh, so the auto test, like, okay, no to add it. Just like all these little things just from having the auto tester. Like I probably wouldn't have checked it for months otherwise.
Yeah, it's like magnesium. I wouldn't have checked it, and the amount of magnesium with all my Monty and stuff that I have in my tank, it just sucks it up.
Nice. Is that your tank behind you?
Yeah.
Looks pretty full. Looks good.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight 120 at this point.
Nice. So the question is, do you just keep fragging it and make it fit, or is it an excuse to go bigger at one point?
Yeah, I changed my mind. All right, we'll get rid of this. We'll sell this off. We'll take a frag piece, start over again. You know how it goes.
Yep.
Tell them about the 450 you got outside your door, Corey.
Coming?
Yeah, we're going to convert the hot tub to salt.
You're pretty cool. I had, it was a couple years ago. I remember someone had this giant, like stainless steel, like, I don't know what the heck it was, but it was like 20 feet by like 15 feet. I was trying to talk my buddy into doing a giant lagoon in his garage. It would have been cool. He didn't bite, but it would have been awesome.
No, he didn't take it.
Need some lighting for that one.
Oh, yeah. That'd be awesome, though. Any other random questions? Rabbit holes you guys want to go down?
When's the Versa coming back in stock, Deven? What's your inside sources telling you?
I heard.
I was going to say something about that.
I heard. I legitimately heard rumors that there is more stock coming very soon.
Yeah, they were moving their headquarters or something, right? The U.S. headquarters.
They're in the middle of moving buildings to a new building, so it was half of it plus reduced staff, just pandemic, all that jazz. I mean, there's a whole slew of stuff, and they just couldn't keep up. Yeah, I see them in stock, and then they're out of stock 2 hours later. But I did have, because I am in like the Ecotech, like the little insider groups, I do get random updates, and they did say they are coming, and hopefully a few weeks there should be another big batch of stock coming out. So hopefully soon. But if
did
you
do, say you use a Kimura or the Versa on your calcium reactor, Deven?
I used to use the Kimura, and now I use the Versa.
Okay.
Both work very well. Both are great pumps. Main reason I swapped is because I had the original Kimura, and at certain speeds, it made these like harmonic sounds that bug me. So that's why I bought the Versa. That was my only driver, but they're both great pumps. They both do an awesome job on a calcium reactor.
Yeah, I have that pump. I haven't put it on yet. It's been sitting in my garage for like a year now.
Yeah.
But it's big, you know. I got to like make a hanging bracket off of my sump or something so I can.
For the Kimura?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that
Got
big.
the same one sitting right there. Well, you can't see it, obviously.
It's green screens, transparent it out, the virtual background.
I know. I got that in the Carbadosa sitting on my half wall, just chilling, collecting dust.
Yeah. Carbon doser is nice to have too. It makes it super easy. If you only
Between
bought
those two.
yeah, if you only could
Huge.
have one, I would say the peristaltic pump first, because having that super tweak to the flow is just amazing. But if you have both, I mean, that's like ultimate calcium reactor stability.
I made my kids eat peanut butter and jelly for 2 months.
At least they eating.
Yeah. Black Friday, I spent like $2,000 on friggin' buying supplies, and then I was like, "Oh crap, Christmas is like 3 weeks away." I got in a groove, and I was just ordering T5 bulbs, everything, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
You got your kid a carbon dose for Christmas Day. What do I do with this?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I got my
I'll
oldest.
return that for you.
My oldest daughter wanted a puffer fish, so I got her a tiny. I don't even know what kind of puffer it was. I was like, it's in the frag tank. There was no frags in there, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you're responsible for it. You have to feed it. Mm-hmm. I fed it the first night. I don't know, about a week went by, and the thing was under a rock, white as could be, eyeballs missing. I was like, well,
whoa.
She's like, Dad, did it really die because I didn't feed it? I'm like, yeah, what do you think it was going to do? Survive? Like, I don't know. I mean, it just came into the store too, and who knows that afternoon? So who really knows what happened to it?
That's bad.
It disappeared.
Did not keep on giving.
Yeah, it disappeared after like after like the second day. I was like, yeah, this thing's. My buddy was like, oh, they wedged themselves in rocks. So I started moving rocks around, and I was like, oh, that's not good. But
ran out of snails. I had back in the day those little pea puffers. They're cute. Eat all your snails. The hard thing was keeping up snails for them, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it a Valentini, like the little saddleback puffers?
I think it was a regular porcupine.
Okay, yeah.
She gave it a name, everything. It was cool because its eyeballs, they were like kind of like a bug or a fly. They move different ways, and they like when you shine the light, it had like a real cool, like almost like an image or whatever in its eyeball. I was like, but
yeah, puffers have cool personalities, like little puppy dogs.
My buddy's got an 8-foot reef tank. So the tank behind me, I bought off him. So his upgrade, he's got a shark, he's got a 4-foot eel, he's got a huge lionfish. He literally has, he's got a queen angel. Everything you shouldn't have in a reef tank, he has in a reef tank.
Yeah, lost him.
There he is. He's back.
Nice.
Freeze Master Pete with no sound. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, now you're muted. You're really building suspense.
Dude, so much for gigabit Ethernet over here. Jesus. I should go back to dial-up.
Straight out of Brockton.
Not me, buddy.
Bluetooth.
Yep.
It's the infrastructure in my town. It's from like the 1600s. I don't know.
Did you ever have an issue with your Versa pumps?
The very first batch, they had an issue with the tube riding forward if you ran it too fast. So after that, there was little retainer rings to prevent that. So I did have that happen once or twice at first. Then the newer, I know they were sending them out to pump people after that. So that's the only issue.
Yeah, I mean, I had an issue with the bottom tube, where the tubes came out. It was always leaking or getting air, depending on which way I was using it on the calcium reactor.
Yeah,
and I went through them 3 times to actually get it fixed.
So the new ones, they double O-ring them all to prevent that. So they have fixed all those little things. I was bad at testing them, so I had them from like the very beginning. So I've seen a couple of those little things, but I never had mine leaking though. But I had the tube riding forward, so I 3D for my own little clip. But then eventually they came out with them and started sending them out to people that had that issue.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
I know there's the newer little tweaks on just like the gears and everything inside just to make them run cooler and stuff. But yeah, they've every little batch they've been constantly improving them. So yeah, they're pretty good. I'm kind of addicted to them though. I kind of want more, but I have it on like all my dosing now, and then auto water change, calcium reactor, and calc thing. So I'm putting them through the paces.
All right, I'm gonna read off some names here, just for the raffle. I know we could probably talk all night long. So bear with me. I'm gonna read them off, and if I didn't call your name, send me a PM because I hit show full list and it wiped the whole thing out. So I got myself, I got Corey, I got Devin, I got Angel, Chris Bauman. I know he's not here anymore. I don't really know who he was. I got Correa, Salt Hobby, Herdbird, Aquatic Nerd, Ocelin, B. Wills, Chris, Mixed Reefer, Eddie, Harold, Fishy Business, Scavo, Lawrence. I know you sent me your screen name, but it's somewhere in the chat. Mike, Mr. X, Errol, Slumbody, Alex, Elliot, Country Reefer, Mises, RK, Cryptic Lifestyle, Mind, Lily's, PSU for me, J Deb 101, Chris, New Hampshire, and Tim Yee. I know you sent me your name as well, but like I said, the list is gone. So if you didn't hear your name, you're not in this raffle. Yeah, that was the killer over here.
That was it?
All kinds of technical issues. I'm on keto for like 3 weeks. I'm over here starving. I'm like, oh, I gotta eat supper. But
I have
There's another-
Amanda Turner should be in the raffle too. I
just saw that.
Yeah. Hey, Devin, what brand salt do you use? I'm a Tropic Marin Pro guy.
Currently, I'm using New Marine. In the past,
Yes.
that's true in the chat, but I've used Instant Ocean. I honestly, for the first few years, I just bought whatever's on sale. So
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
so I used Instant Ocean for years. I used Reef Crystals for years, and I've used Red Sea Aqua Forest. And currently, I'm using New Marine. Honestly, like there is, some are better than others. Is it 9-day difference? Not really. The biggest thing is pick a salt that matches whatever range your alkalinity is. If you do little water changes, it's not a big deal if you're dosing anyways. But if you something happens or you want to do a big water change, so that if the salt's roughly the same as your tank, then you're not going to cause a big swing. Stuff's happier. Recently, I've started using New Marine. One big driver is it doesn't make my salt bins all nasty like some of the other ones did. Like a lot of them might have like all that brown muck buildup over time, where I haven't really had that with the New Marine. It's just been mixed up cleaner, and that's a big chunk of my driver. But yeah.
Where does your auto water change pull from? Do you have like a giant mixing station in the basement or something like that?
I have a little mixing station in the basement. I have. Where is it?
You got a picture.
Yeah, I saw that video. That was great.
Yeah, it's pretty compact. Jammed it right in the laundry room there.
Yep, I literally had to get the stacking washer and dryer. You got to do what you got to do to make things work. So
good priorities.
Exactly. I would have loved to put bigger bins in, but I had to compromise and still have some space for laundry and all that jazz. So I got these two roughly 40-gallon bins. So one's RODI, one's saltwater. And yeah, so basically I have it. Currently, this is my little Versa there. It pumps it upstairs. And it's doing about 2.5 gallons per day. I think 10,000 mils a day. I have it set up. It does that every
your
day.
RODI just hooked up to your bin, so it automatically fills?
Yep. So I have, where's my older photo that shows the whole thing? Somewhere in the Instagram archives. So below, I have an optical sensor lower down in the bin and one at the top. So when it does empty, it will turn itself on and just refill the bin. So it kind of tops off the top off bin for me, so I don't have to do it, which has been great.
Yeah, I did that with mine also. It's pretty great. Gets down 40 gallons. It fills it back up.
Yeah, love it.
This is a meeting.
Oh, there you
Do you do a flush on your roadie when it turns on first?
So the one on my frag tank is not that luxurious yet. One day I probably will add it. This one I added a booster pump to it that's sitting on top of the dryer, and you can see a little solenoid right there. So that guy is basically what turns it on and off. So it changes the source water. And I did add an auto flush valve, so it does flush itself for 60 seconds or whatever it is. I have a whole slew of valves here. Normally I leave it so it only fills up the RODI bin. I do have another valve, so if I'm motivated in there, I'll flush it before the DI. So it just burns off any TDS creep. That way your DI lasts longer. And I have another little valve if I want to fill the saltwater bin. And I also have a little P-mump thing in there as well. So we'll pump from that bin to that bin. So if I'm filling it and I'm more in a hurry, I can pump water from that one to that one. Or
how many gallons are those containers?
40 gallons each.
40 gallons each.
Ish.
That's nice and compact.
Yeah, so I was trying to maximize the space. I had to work within what I could do to keep the wave happy and still get my auto change.
Where can I get those?
Happy wife, happy life.
Exactly.
So do you have like a heater and a pump just running in your saltwater one for?
There's a pump in there, but I've never bothered heating it. 2.5 gallons on 200 gallons isn't going to make any dent in the temperature, so I didn't bother with wasting extra power on it. So
but you don't heat it up to even mix it or anything like that.
Nope. But there is a power head in there, so you don't want to know. But I have an old G40 in there, so I already had one, so I used it. But anyway, so there's no holes in the bin, which I thought was good, in the bottom, so no chance to leak. But I have that in the bottom, so it basically runs at like 10% constantly mixing, and I create a little scene for it, so it'll run at 100% for 24 hours. So whenever I mix a new batch, I'll just hit that button, and then it runs full speed for 24 hours and goes back down to its idle like 10% mixing. And that works pretty good. And yeah, once every 3 or 4 weeks, I'll just top it off and dump in some more salt and forget about it for a few more weeks. I was doing 1 gallon a day, and then my nutrients were so high, I decided to up it. So now it's about 2.5 gallons. But I happily would have went with really tall bins if I could have, but works well otherwise.
But you still got more space for other stuff going forward.
There's a laundry hanging rack here for drying stuff.
Oh.
So yeah, it's all gone. I was originally actually going to try and mount the Mastertronic on the wall down here, and then I've finally found a way to fit it in the stand. So it went in the stand, but I was already trying to steal space, but it's cutting it with all the laundry stuff there. So.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yep, that's what you got to do.
Yep, that's true.
And then on the other tank, I do have a similar thing with the GHL. I use the Auto XP, Auto Aqua, whatever it is, that like Flood Guardian, maybe I think it's called, where it's an optical sensor and you can use it to like fill your bucket. So, and it will shut it off when it hits it. So I have that. I have a 10-gallon ATO container on the frag tank. I have that hooked up to the RODI, and I have the GHL turn it on every 3 or 4 days. So every 3 or 4 days, it will turn it on. The RODI will refill that bin, and then I have it set to run from like 8 a.m. to noon or 1 p.m., whatever. So it can only run for that 4 or 5 hours. So again, with all the levels of redundancy, if it runs more too long, it'll shut it off. There's a float valve in there which can shut it off, or if it's the optical sensor, it'll shut it off. So I got 3 different potential ways to prevent it from ever overfilling. But then I have that just refilling it that way. So it's all about the automation.
Was that the XPO you said?
It is, I think it's called the Flood Guardian, XP Aqua.
Flood Guardian, yeah.
Or Auto Aqua XP. One of the two. I never remember which one it is. One of the two of those.
Yeah, I know what you're...
Yeah, solenoid in that, and that works well. And then the GHL just kicks it on every like 3 days or so, 3 or 4 days to refill it. And then I have the ATO mainly there because the calc's pulling from it, and then the ATO is just pulling from it.
Those torches are looking crazy in there.
Thank you.
They look beautiful.
You love the torches.
Mm-hmm.
I had an Aussie gold that died, and recently it made me quite sad. And then recently, a local guy was selling this guy an indigo torch. So I'm happy. Oh, sorry, my screen sharing somewhere. So I just picked this guy up. So it's back to the balance is restored of having a semi-gold torch in the tank.
Mm-hmm. It looks good though.
Yeah. Yeah, love them. Yeah, torches are lots of fun.
Deven, where'd you pick up those 40-gallon compact bins?
That was just at a local plastic shop. I was on a hunt for ages to find them. I know there is a few places that sell it. It's a little bit harder to find the square ones. Basically, shipping them was a bugger from anywhere. So I found a local place, and I just went through all their list of ones. And I was going to get custom ones made, but it was like double the price. So that was just the closest size I could fit that was within the not getting crazy on the price range. Like I think they were like 160, 180 bucks each, which wasn't bad. But custom would have been like 300 or 400 each. So
and shipping would have been 250 bucks a piece.
That's what I mean. Anywhere else would have been a small fortune.
That's where they get you. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean they're big to ship, so I understand. But yeah, the square ones are the way to go if you are in a tight space, right? Because you can maximize, all those corners you're missing out. Circles are stronger because it's equal pressure everywhere. Where square will bulge a bit, but it is my best utilization of space for that area. So find a local plastic shop and see what they got. Save you a fortune shipping.
Well, I seen Granger has a few. Like you said, you go through so many catalogs and so many different variants. It's just bananas. It's mind-boggling.
Yep, I've spent days and days doing that before I finally ended up with those.
Yeah, Mixed Master Car and U.S. Plastics has some pretty good options too if you want to pay the shipping.
That's the problem.
See if you have local places. Like I literally just found like a local place that did plastic. I just went in and talked to them and they're like, oh yeah, here's the catalog of size we have molds for. So I just picked through it. I'm like, okay, I want this because a lot of the square ones are generally for like RVs and water tanks and stuff like that.
Right.
But the places making it, you're like, okay, don't put any holes on the side, put it on the end cap, right? So I got them to put that big porthole in the top for me, like a big 10-inch one, so it's easy to get in there and clean it or salt or whatever you want to do with it. So that's why if you can talk to one of the companies and then you can get them to tweak one of their already designs, it's way cheaper than trying to go with some crazy custom one.
Kyle Lano from Backwoods Reefs, one of our sponsors, he gets barrels or mixing containers. I don't know if he just gets round ones or not, but he gets them on the regular. So you guys might want to reach out to him as well.
Nice.
But I'm gonna run this raffle just for whatever. Hopefully it doesn't delete again.
Yeah, right. Nice excuse.
Devin, you're included in on this as well.
All right.
We can't ship you coral, but
Corey,
damn it.
All right.
I used to ship it to the border and go and get it, but it's closed for freaking months and months.
Let me take a note here because I'm gonna be brain dead. All right, Atlee has won a $25 gift card to any online vendor of your choice. Send me a private message on where you want and your email address.
See if this works.
The crowd goes wild.
I did work, nice.
The next one's for the same thing. Fishy business, Matt. Dude, you should run the show because clearly I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, it's all those animations and everything.
That's why you got like 6 followers, Paul. Come on.
I know, right? So the next are going to be two $50 gift certificates to any sponsor of your choice of our club for coral or whatever. The first one is me. I'm not even joking. I'll screenshot that shit. But that's all right. The club already owes me friggin' a fortune as it is, so I'll remove my name. Let's see. Herd Bird, $50.
Hell yeah.
Bird.
Thanks, buddy.
You got that. You got that. All right, last one. Tom G. I have no idea who Tom G is. If Tom G is here, reach out to me. If not, we're going to run a backup one.
Hear the wheel spinning.
Ikey 98.
Nice.
That's it, guys. That's it for raffles. But
Sweet.
Devin, you can call this whenever you feel like it. Yeah, I don't want to keep you. I mean, it's obviously going on 2 hours. I'll literally sit here till next week shooting the
You guys
shit.
have any other
But
questions or anything you guys want to know about, dig into?
Nope. I'll just say thanks for coming, Devin. Appreciate it. Always good info, and I'll check out the channel some more and probably talk to you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, hey.
Corey. Talk
Sure
to you guys
thing.
all later.
yeah, Corey, if the world ever gets back, Corey, Devin, if the world ever gets back to normal, we'd love to fly you out and have you in person and give you a tour of the town and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I miss all the trips. Last year it was like almost every month it was somewhere for a trip, and it was just tons of fun to reef geek out everywhere. So I miss it. One day they'll be back.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, pleasure seeing you again, especially on Zoom.
Yeah,
Although I watch the videos and all that stuff, so it's almost like we're always in touch.
Yeah, always appreciated. Thanks for having me again, guys.
Thank you for the great videos.
Yep, no problem. I don't even know how I keep making them up every week, but it's whatever.
It happens, right?
Yeah, it's like, oh, what am I working on this week? All right, yeah, awesome. All right, guys, Thanks.
Have a good one, gang.
All right, have a good night, Devin. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks again, Devin. Appreciate it.